Okay, here we are in section 1.5, question number 11, which is 2x squared minus 5x plus 2. That's a 5 in the middle. Okay, now this one is going to be more difficult. I skipped number 11 before, and I'm going back now to number 11. This one's going to be more difficult because it has a number in front. But let me begin first. In factoring, which is what we're doing here, it says factor. The whole section basically says factor. It's all about factoring. So in factoring, the first step is to see, is there a GCF? Is there something in common to all the terms? Is there a number that goes into 2, 5, and 2? No, there's not. So we skip that. I mean, we check, but there's nothing there. So step 2. Now, for 3 terms, which is what we have, we do the 2 parentheses, right? So I'm going to do the 2 parentheses. And, okay, so I'm going to, basically, there's going to be a first and a second item in the first parenthesis and a first and a second item in the second parenthesis. And I'm looking for the front times the front to make the front. Front times the front to make the front. Basically, the technique I'm going to use here is guessing. But guessing with a plan and some organization. I'll explain as we go. So anyway, front times front. What times what makes 2x squared? Well, 2x times x. There's really no other choice, right? 2x times x makes 2x squared. Got it. Now, jump to the back. And back here. Don't worry about the middle. We'll do that last. Back times back, or last times last. The last one in the first parenthesis times the last one in the second parenthesis has to make the last number. What times what makes 2? Well, 2 times 1, right? So 2 times 1. But here's my first important hint. Do you see how I have 2 2's in this parenthesis? Here's first important hint. You're never going to have 2 numbers in the same parenthesis that have any number in common that divides into both. You're never going to have a number. So in other words, you can't have 2 and 2, and you couldn't even have. What if I couldn't even put like a 2 and a 6 there? Never going to happen. Why not? Well, why not? Because say it was 2x plus 6, you could factor out a 2. If they had, see, 2 and 6, 2 goes into both of them, so you could factor out a 2, right? 2 times x would go back to 2x, and 2 times 3 goes back to 6. Because they have 2 in common, because 2 divides into both of them, you could factor out a 2. Okay, so what? Why is that the end of the world? Well, that would mean 2 is in common in the front. Okay, so what? Well, we already looked at step number 1 and found out there's nothing in common, right? 2 doesn't go into all those numbers. And nothing, there's no number that goes into all those numbers. So there's no way there could be a common element showing up later. We already checked that on step number 1. So therefore, you're never going to have 2 numbers in the same parenthesis that have anything in common, because you already checked the GCF, what was in common, in step number 1. So that's an important hint, and it really speeds you up when you remember it. So let's go back here now. So we're looking for the 2 parentheses again. So we're talking about front times front to make front. So that's 2x times x. And then last times last to make last. 2 times 1, right? But the 2 has to go here and the 1 there, you see. See, this way 2 and 1 have nothing in common, and x and 2 have nothing in common. So that satisfies the first hint. Never going to have 2 numbers in the same parenthesis that have anything in common. Okay, great. So is that the right answer? How do we know if that is the right answer? Well, notice I have not put any pluses or minuses in there yet. I saved that for the end. So what we got to do now is we basically have to check it, because we've guessed and we have to check to see if it's right. So take the 2x and go to both. Don't worry about any signs yet. So what do we get? 2x squared and 4x. Did you track with that? That 2x multiplied x to make 2x squared, and then that 2x multiplied 2 to make 4x, right? And he's done. He went to both. And now the 1 will go to both. 1x and 1 times 2 is 2. So there's the 4 terms. So there's no signs yet, no pluses or minuses. Now it's all about these middle 2 terms. They have to go back and make the middle 1 term. Whoops, didn't meant to circle it all there. Right? So these middle 2 terms have to go back and make this middle 1 term with the correct signs. So here's where the signs come into play. Whatever sign is on the middle, that's hint number 2. Hint number 2. The sign in the middle goes on the bigger number. Smaller number can go either way. Whatever, either way, comma, whatever makes the middle. So, hint number 2. The sign in the middle, which is what? A negative sign, has to go on the bigger. What bigger? Of these middle 2. The bigger of those middle 2, which one's bigger? The 4. So that has to be minus. That's what I'm saying. The sign in the middle has to go on the bigger. Now the other sign, the sign on the 1x, that can change depending on what it needs, right? The smaller number can go either way, whatever makes the middle. What do you mean makes the middle? It makes minus 5x. So what sign do I need here? Got minus 4x and what to make minus 5x? Well, you need another minus, don't you? In this case, the smaller one will also be minus. Minus 4 and minus 1, right? If you lose $4 and you lose $1, you lost $5. It's working. It makes the middle. So, okay, so what? Well, let me tell you where these signs go. If you're doing this just like I am, laying this out just like I, then these will always crisscross back to here. Minus will go there and crisscross back to there. And the last thing, now we can check, what's the sign on this guy? We don't have any sign there. Well, remember, he's the last number out of the 4. Where does he come from? The last in this parenthesis times the last in that parenthesis. -1 times -2 is positive, right? 2 negatives multiplied by positive. Is that correct? Does that go back to here? Yes. Check. It's all working. It's all right. So now remember, the answer is this. All of this was just the check. It's not the answer. I'll cross it out now. It was just a check. You don't have to cross it out. But I want to be clear that what Math Excel wants, the answer to what the Canvas homework system wants, is this answer right here. These 2 parentheses are the answer. All of this was just the check. So there we go. That's how we factor. So keep in mind those 2 hints. Okay, so jumping forward now to number 14. All right, same thing. So first step, is there a GCF? Is there something in common to all these terms? You take your calculator out and try it. Try dividing by 5. 5 goes into 25. 5 goes into 120. Your calculator will tell you just divide by 5. It goes in evenly. But if you take 144 and divide by 5, it doesn't work. It's some crazy decimal. So no, 5 doesn't go into all of them. 25 doesn't go into all of them. No. So it's good we looked for it. It's not here. Later it will be showing up. So it's important to have it to be looking for the GCF. All right. It's not there. Go right to the 2 parentheses, and you know the drill, right? It's front times front to make front. What times what? Makes 25x squared. 5x, 5x. And then you jump to the back. Last times last to make last. What times what makes 144? Now, let me give you a hint. If you're looking at something like 144, sometimes, not always, this is hint number 3. Sometimes sometimes the square root of the number works. Not always. So take your calculator, take the square root of 144, and you get 12. And you think, is that going to work? 12 times 12? That does make 144. Sometimes you'll do the square root, and it'll come out some crazy decimal, so it doesn't work. Okay, but anyway, we're not there yet. Notice I haven't put any plus signs or minus signs in. Remember, we do that at the end. What do we do now? We have to check. We have to see if it's right. It's just a guess. Let's see if it's the right guess. So, all right, here we go. I'm going to take, remember what you do. The first goes to both. 5x times 5x, 25x squared. And then 5x times 12, use your calculator, if you're rusty on some of these times tables, 60x. Oh, no plus signs. There's no signs here. Whoops. All right, he's done. Now the 12 is going to go to both. 12 times 5x is, again, 60x. Use your calculator. 12 times 12 is 144. Okay, now it's time for the signs. Remember the hint? Remember the important hint. Sign in the middle of the original, sign in the middle of the original always goes on what? The bigger. What bigger? The bigger of these two. Well, they're the same. Yeah, so it'll go on both of them, won't it? Negative 60x and negative 60. If you lose 60 bucks and you lose 60 bucks, you lost 120 bucks. Negative 120. It's right. And check it on your calculator if you want to. So these crisscross. Remember, this goes here. This goes here. And then double check. You still need the sign on the last one. What sign goes there? Well, remember, the last one comes from the last in this parenthesis times the last in that parenthesis. The last comes from the last times the last. Negative 12 times negative 12 is positive. Two negatives make positive. 144. Is that correct? Yeah. It's all working. Check. It's all right. So remember, that's just the check. The real answer is right here. It's the two parentheses. Oh, by the way, actually, since they're the same exact thing twice, see how that's 5x minus 12, 5x minus 12, identical twins? When it's the exact same thing twice, we just write one of them and we put a 2 power on it. And that's the final answer. There we go. All right, let's try number 15. And we'll take a small, this will be a little easier, 25x squared minus 16. Okay, now notice, first step, is there a GCF? Is there some number that divides into 25 and into 16? No. Now, you can try your calculator. 5 goes into 25, but not into 16. 4 goes into 16, but not 25. Now, all right, we looked for it. So, okay, so what are we going to do? Notice this is different. It's only 2 terms, not 3 terms. It's only 2 terms, not 3 terms. But it doesn't really matter. It's still kind of the same thing, you know. We're going to do the 2 parentheses. It's just going to be an easier version. 2 parentheses, okay? And front times front to make front. What times what makes 25x squared? 5x, 5x, right? And now let's do the back. Okay, so last times last to make 16. What times what makes 16? 4 times 4. Okay, well, how do they make minus 16? How do they do that? How do you get negative 16? 1 positive, 1 negative, either order, right? Positive times negative makes negative. So is that the right answer? Well, let's check it. Let's see if it's right. How do you check? Remember, again, the first one goes to both. So 5x times 5x, 25x squared, and then 5x times negative 4 be negative 20x. And now the 4 goes to both. 4 times 5x, it's positive, isn't it? Positive 20x. And 4 times negative 4 is negative 16. So what's that? Well, notice these guys cancel because they're opposite, right? Negative 20x and positive 20x, they cancel out. So you just have 25x squared and minus 16, which is a check. It's the same as the original. So it's good. So what's our answer? It's these two, right? This is the answer. That bottom part was just the check. And by the way, these are different signs. This is a plus 4 and a minus 4. So it's not the same exact thing twice. It's not identical twins. So we just leave it like that. That's the final answer. Let's try 16. 16 will be very similar. 64x squared minus 9. Again, two terms. You know the first step. Is there a GCF? Is there something that goes into 64 and into 9? No. You can use your calculator. It doesn't work. What's next? Well, let's try the hint with the square root. You know, if you're looking at 64, you're not sure. Hit square root of 64 in your calculator. Tell you 8. And you go, oh, 8's a good idea. Yeah. So 2 parentheses. Front times front to make 64x squared, 8x, right? That 8 we got from hitting the square root. Okay, then you know the back, don't you? What times what makes minus 9? So 3 times 3. And how do you get minus 9? 1 plus 1 minus. So let's check it to make sure it's good. So the first goes to both. 8x times 8x. 64x squared, 8x times minus 3, minus 24x. And now this guy goes to both. Positive 3 times 8x, plus 24x. Positive 3 times minus 3, minus 9. Notice these cancel because they're one negative, one positive. And so we just get 64x squared minus 9. Check. That's the same as the original. It's working. So this is our answer. It is correct. And they're not the same thing twice. One's a plus 3, one's a minus 3. So we just leave it like that. There we go. Okay, let's go on now to one that's a little more tricky, like number 18. I'm going to skip 17 and go to 18, which is a little more advanced, but it'll be good practice. 12x squared minus 5x minus 3. All right. So, first step. What's the GCF? You know, is there some number that goes into 12, into 5, and into 3? No, there's no number that divides evenly into all of them. Skip that. All right. So then what do? You know the drill. 2 parentheses, right? And front times front to make front. What times what makes 12x squared? Well, there's a couple choices, aren't there? Over here on the side, 12 is 4 times 3, but it's also 6 times 2, and it's also 12 times 1. So there's a lot of options. Which ones should we use to multiply to be 12? Well, here's hint, what is it, number 4? First try, well, when there's options, I should say. When there's options, first try the numbers closest together, like 4 and 3. They're close. They're only separated by 1, right? Whereas like 6 and 2, they're 4 away from each other, and 12 and 1, they're 11 away from each other. So we're going to start with 4 and 3. It's usually the numbers closer together. That's usually what it is. The numbers closer together are the ones that work. All right, so here we go. So I'm going to try 4 and 3. So I'm going to try 4x and 3x. And by the way, the order on the first two, let me write that other fact. Hint number 5, I guess it is. Order on the fronts, or order on the first two front numbers does not matter. So you could put 3x here and 4x there, whatever, doesn't matter. The order on the first two front numbers does not matter, but the order on the back two numbers does matter. So the order on the first two doesn't matter. You could go 4x and 3x or 3x and 4x, whatever. Doesn't matter. But the order on the back two will matter. Why? Because somebody's going to be next to a 4x and somebody's going to be next to a 3x, and that's different. Okay. So now what? So Front times front to make front. Got it. Now, back or last times last to make last. What times what makes 3? And again, don't worry about the signs. We'll do those later. What times what makes 3? Well, 1 times 3. So I'll go 1 times 3. Right? Just 1 times 3 makes 3. Don't worry about the negative. We'll do that later. 1 times 3, last times last makes last. 1 times 3 makes 3. But hold on. Do you realize we're violating one of the earlier hints? Remember how there's never going to be two numbers in the same parenthesis that have anything in common, let alone are the very same number. You couldn't have 3x with 6. You couldn't have 3x with 9. You couldn't have 3x with 15 or 12. It's never gonna happen. Remember, you're never gonna have two numbers in the same parenthesis that have anything in common. Why? Because then you could factor out the 3. Like that, if it was a plus, you factor 3, and so what? We already looked for GCF. There is nothing to take out in common. We know that's not true. So there can't be anything later showing up that has anything in common. So no way does the 3 go there. So then that tells us to switch the order. Put the 3 here and the 1 there. Let me get rid of this circling thing here. Right? So do you see that? To see how I knew the 3 had to go here and the 1 there, not vice versa. You can't put the 1 here and the 3 there, because then the two 3's would be in the same parenthesis. You can't have two numbers in the same parenthesis that have anything in common, let alone are the very same number. Okay, so can't do that. Well, so then, is this right then? Notice I've not put in the pluses or minuses yet. First, I check. Let's check. Okay, so the 4x goes to both. So 4x times 3x, 12x squared. 4x times 1, 4x. And the 3 goes to both. 9x and 3 times 1, 3. So is that right or wrong? We got to put in the signs, don't we? Remember how this works. Remember the hint I gave you. The sign in the middle. So when it comes to the signs, what tells you the signs? It's the sign in the middle. The middle of the original 3. The middle, sign in the middle goes where? Goes on the bigger. What bigger? Bigger among the middle 2, right? Because these middle 2 have to go back and make the middle 1, don't they? With the right signs. So the sign in the middle goes on the bigger. Who's the bigger, 4 or 9? 9. So that's for sure the case. The sign in the middle will go on the bigger. Now the other one, this can be plus or minus depending on what it needs to make the middle work. So what does it need to make the middle work? Think about money. What do you got to do with money? With $4 and $9 to have a negative 5, right? This is negative 5 we got to make. You got to have plus 4. You got to gain $4 and then lose $9. And the net result is you've lost $5, haven't you? That works. So again, the sign in the middle here goes on the bigger, and then the other number can go either way, whatever it needs to make the middle work. So there's the right signs. Now, how do they get back into the parentheses? They crisscross, right? This guy goes here, and this guy goes here, right? Because that's how minus 9x, right? Minus 3 times 3x makes minus 9x. That's right. And plus 1 times 4 makes plus 4. Anyway, now the last thing you have to determine is the sign at the back. Like, what's the sign on this guy? Now, he's the last number. So where does he come from? The last in this parenthesis times the last in this parenthesis. Now we have signs. We can check it. Negative 3 times positive 1 is negative 3. Is that correct? Yes, it is. Check. It matches the original. So that's the right answer. This is the right answer. We just checked it. This is the answer. Those two parentheses. Or, by the way, you can always switch the parentheses. Let me mention that. You can go 3x plus 1, 4x minus 3. That's the same thing. Either way. See how I just moved the entire parenthesis? Right? This parenthesis went here, and this parenthesis went there. Same thing. This answer's good. This answer's good. This is all just the check. It's all good. Either one of those answers is right. You can switch the parenthesis either way, and it's the right answer. All right. That's good. Let's try. Let's jump to 20. I'm going to jump to 20, which looks like a challenging one. 30x squared minus 19x minus 63. All right. How is this one gonna work? How are we gonna make this one work? You know what? Actually, I just changed my mind. Let's do 19. I think we should do 19. 19 looks tricky to me now. I was going to skip it, but all of a sudden I'm thinking it's tricky. 3x squared minus 14x plus 15. Okay. First step, GCF. Is there a number that goes into 3, 14, and 15? No. Nope. We looked for it. Still not there. It will be in a little bit, but not now. All right, 2 parentheses. And you know the drill here. Front times front to make front. What times what makes 3x squared? 3x and x. All right. No other options, right? How about the back? What times what makes 15? Well, 3 times 5. 3 times 5. And should I go 3 times 5 like that? No, can't have two numbers in the same parenthesis that have anything in common. Those two 3's can't be together. So you got to switch it up, right? Put the 5 here and the 3 there. Is that good like that? Now, let's check it. No signs yet, no pluses or minuses. Remember, we do that at the end. So this first goes to both, and we get, I'm going 3x times x, 3x squared, 3x times 3, 9x. The 5 goes to both, 5x, and 5 times 3, 15. Now, can they make the middle? Remember, the sign in the middle goes on the bigger of these two middle ones. Who's bigger, the 9? Okay, now the other one can be, the smaller one can be plus or minus, depending on what it needs to make the middle correctly. What sign does it need? It also needs to be negative this time, doesn't it? Because if you lose $9 and you lose $5, you lost $14. Now, how do they go back up to the parentheses? They crisscross. They're both negative, so it doesn't really matter. Last thing, double check the last sign. Negative 5. Right, remember, this last one comes from last times last. Negative 5 times negative 3 plus 15. Check. It's right. It's good. So this is the correct answer. Either order, or you could switch the order, put the x minus 3 first, and then the 3x minus 5. Good either way. On to 20. So on to 20 we go. 30x squared minus 19x minus 60. This will be a little bit harder. Okay, first GCF. Is there something in common? Is there some number that goes into 30? Well, there's a lot of numbers that go into 30. 5 and 6, 2, 15, 3. But nothing goes into 19 other than 19 itself. So there's no GCF here. There's no number that goes into all three of them because 19 is such a weird number. All right, right into the 2 parentheses. So you know the drill. Front times front to make front. What times what makes 30? Now, remember, usually if you're not sure, just write them out over here. Use your calculator. 5 times 6, 3 times 10, 2 times 15, 1 times 30. Now, which pair should we try first? Remember, it's the pair closest together. You always try the pair closest together first. So 5x, 6, or maybe I'll put the biggest one in the front. It doesn't matter. Remember, the order on the first 2 doesn't matter. You could do it either way, but the order on the back 2 will matter. So now let's jump to the back 2. We're going to go 63. Now, what multiplies to be 63? Use your calculator. 7 times 9, 3 times 21. It's probably 7 times 9. They're the closest. So can I go 9 here and 7 there? Could that possibly be right? No way. Why not? Because 6 and 9 have 3 in common, right? You could take a 3 out, right? 3 goes into 6 and into 9. So they have 3 in common. Remember, you're never going to have two numbers in the same parenthesis that have anything in common because you could factor it out, and we know you can't because we already checked for the common factors on step 1. So no way. So for the 9 and the 7, they can't go in that order. It must be 7 here and 9 there. for the 7 and the 9. Remember, because you can't have two numbers in the same parenthesis that have anything in common. So is it good so far? And so far so good, right? These two, 6 and 7, have nothing in common that divides into both of them. And 5 and 9 have nothing in common that divides into both of them. All right, let's keep going. How do we check? Remember the check. No signs yet. We'll do the signs at the end. The first goes to both. 6x times 5x, 30x squared. 6x times 9, 54x. And now this guy goes to both. 7 times 5x, 35x, and 7 times 9, 63. Okay, now we got to do the signs, right? Remember how that works. It's very important. Sign in the middle goes on the what? Which of these two? The bigger, always. But the other one, the smaller one, can be plus or minus, depending on whatever works on your calculator. Just try it on your calculator. Try both ways. Try minus 54 plus 35, and try minus 54 minus 35. This one will be minus 19, which is the right one in the middle. So then you go, oh, it's plus 35. Just try them on your calculator. Find the one that works. So again, the sign in the middle goes on the bigger for sure, and then the other one, the smaller, can be plus or minus. Just try them both and find out which one works to make the middle, right? The smaller one can go either way, whatever it takes to make the middle. How do they go back to the parentheses? They crisscross. This goes minus right here, plus right here. Double check. Last thing you have to check is this last sign. And that comes from the last in this parenthesis times the last in this parenthesis to make the last here. What is that? Plus 7 times minus 9 minus 63. That's correct. Check. We got it. This is our answer. Or you could switch the order, right? You could write the 5x. You could switch the whole entire parenthesis. You can't move the stuff inside of a parenthesis, but you can always switch the entire parentheses. Either way, it's good either way. Both are good. This is good or this is good. Those are the final answers. They checked out with the check. They're both good. Okay, so here we are on number 22. This is a very important one. This one will be pretty tricky. What's the first step? GCF. Is there something, is there a number that goes into 40, 50, and 15? Yes. Here it finally is. And if we miss it, it's ball game over. Yes, there is. There's a number. What divides evenly into all those numbers? 5 does. 5 goes into 40, 50, and 15 evenly. So we take the 5 out of the front. So when the answer is yes, you do the one big parenthesis with the GCF in the front, right? Put the 5 in the front. You're going to have the 3 numbers on the inside. Well, how do you know what those numbers are? Whatever works. 5 times what? We'll go back to 40w squared. 8w squared. 5 times what? We'll go back to minus 50w. Minus 10w. And 5 times what? We'll go back to 15. Plus 3. There we go. Okay, so we took out the 5. Now, what about this 5? He's going to stay there in the front. He's part of the final answer. We just don't do anything else with him. Now we do the double parentheses, and we do the regular stuff, right? Front times front to make front. What times what makes 8w squared? Well, for 8, you can have 4 times 2, 8 times 1, so we're clearly going to try 4 times 2, 4w, 2w. Okay, now we jump to the back, and we say, okay, last times last to make last. What times what makes 3? Well, 1 and 3, right? And there's 2 orders in which we could do it, aren't there? We could put 1 and 3 like that, or 3 and 1 like that. Both are possible. This is a very, very tricky problem. So let's try 1 and 3. That's actually wrong. It won't work, but watch. It's super close to working. It's so close it'll easily fool us. Let me show you. So remember how we do our check now. Don't worry about the 5 in the front. We just check these guys, right? The 4 goes to both. No signs yet. We do that at the end. So you know how that works. 4W times 2W, 8W squared. 4W times 3, 12W. And now this guy goes to both. 1 times 2W is 2W. 1 times 3 is 3. Okay, now you remember how the signs go. Track with me here. This is very tricky. Okay, the sign in the middle goes on which one? The bigger. Who's the bigger between of the two middle ones? Between the 12 and the 2, who's the bigger? Well, the 12 is, right? So the sign in the middle. Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't be going. I'm really focused here now. I'm sorry. I should not have gone back there. Don't worry about that minus 50W thing. That we're working with the other parentheses now. So look right here. Same thing though. Sign in the middle. This is what we're trying to factor right now. We're down to here. So the sign in the middle goes on the bigger, and the other one can be plus or minus depending on what it needs to make the middle correct. How do you make minus 10? What does it need? Oh, it means plus. It looks so good. This is still wrong, but it looks good so far, doesn't it? Watch how tricky it is. So that looks right, doesn't it? I mean, if you lose $12 and you gain back 2, you lost 10. That looks right. Let's check it. Oh, no, there's one last thing. In case you've been skipping this, this is important. The sign here, I've got no sign here. What is this, plus or minus? How do you figure that out? Well, I forgot to put these guys. Let's crisscross these guys. This minus goes here. This plus goes there. It's not going to be true, but let's see it. Now, how do you find this sign? The sign on the last times the sign on the last makes the last. So what's that? Plus 1 times minus 3. That makes minus 3. Is that correct? No. It's supposed to be plus 3. That's not right. Cross it out. It did not check out. Well, then what? You got to try the other option. Remember this, how we put 1 here and 3 there? They go the other way. 3 has to be here and 1 has to be there. Let's redo it down here. So bring it all the way down here. Keep that 5 in the front. The 2 parentheses. Again, front times front to make 8, so that's 4W and 2W. That part was all good. And now last times last to make last, 3. But this time let's put the 3 first and then the 1. Other order, and it'll work. Let's try it. How do we check it? Remember the check? What do we do to check it? We take the first to both. That'd be 8W squared, and 4W times 1 is 4W. Then the 3 goes to both. 3 times 2W is 6W. 3 times 1 is 3. Okay, now, how do we do the signs? Remember, the sign in the middle goes on the bigger. Who's the bigger in the middle here, among these two middle ones? The 6 is the bigger. So the sign in the middle up here goes on the bigger, minus 6. That's getting to be a big minus sign. Minus 6, and I just don't like that color. Let me change that. So minus 6, and then the other one can be plus or minus depending on what works to make the middle. What works to make negative 10? He's got to be minus also, doesn't he? If you lose $4 and you lose $6, you lost $10. Right? That's a 10 there. So that's right. Okay, and then they crisscross. Minus here, minus there. But let's do the last check. How do you check the sign on the last number? He comes from the last times the last, which now have signs on them. Negative 3 times negative 1. 2 negatives make positive 3. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. That matches what we came from. So that's correct. That's the final answer. What is this? This is the final correct answer. I'll say, or you could have that 5 in the front and you could switch the order, right? You could, oops, I'm getting scribbly here. You could put the 2W minus 1 first and then the 4w minus 3. It's good either way, this way or this way. They're both right. They both check out. They both go back and make what we started from. So they're good. There we go. It's a tricky one. Okay, 23. 2x squared minus 50. First step, is there a GCF? Is there something in common to those two terms? Yes. 2 can come out, can't it? Right? 2 goes into 2 and into 50. So you do one big parenthesis, right? Take a 2 out, 2 times x squared would be 2x squared, 2 times 25 would go back to 50, okay? And now that 2 in the front, remember, he just stays there. Any GCF that you put in the front, greatest common factor, that'll just stay in the front, part of the final answer. Now we do the 2 parentheses, and we say, okay, front times front to make front. Well, that's easy, x times x. And last times last to make 25. 5 and 5. These ones that only have 2 terms like this are easy. What signs do they need to make negative 25? 1 plus 1 minus. There's really no other option. So in this case, I just go ahead and throw in the signs because there's no other option. Let's check it. It's going to work. This first one goes to both. X squared minus 5x. The second one goes to both. Plus 5x. And plus 5 times minus 5. Minus 25. These 2 in the middle cancel, and you get x squared minus 25, which is what it came from. So this is the right answer. There it is. So that one's pretty easy. Let's try 24. 2x cubed. The original question had z's, but I'm just going to make it x's because my z's end up looking like 2's. All right, so first step. Take out the GCF, right? Is there something they both have in common? Some number that goes into 2 and 72? Well, yeah, 2 does. But not only 2, they also share letters in common. X cubed and x. So what do? You take out the lower power. Take out x, right? One big parenthesis. You do the one big parenthesis step when you do a GCF. And then, on the second step, go on to the 2 parentheses. Okay, what goes on the inside? Whatever works. 2x times what will go back to 2x cubed? X squared, because the invisible 1 power and the 2 power will add. Minus 2x times what will go back to 72x. Divide that on your calculator. Just take 72 and divide by 2, you'll get 36. So it's got to be 36. 2x times 36 makes 72x. All right. Good to there. Now, can we do more? Yeah, this 2x stays in the front, and then we do the double parenthesis. And you know this is another 2-termer, right? When you just have 2 terms, it's super easy, right? It's called a difference of squares because this comes from x times x. This comes from 6 times 6. If you're not sure, hit the square root of 36. Remember that trick that works sometimes? You'll get 6. So front times front makes x squared. And last times last to make 36 is 6 times 6. And what signs? We can just do the signs automatically when there's 2 terms. What signs do they need to make minus 36? 1 plus, 1 minus. You can check it. I'll check it here. So let's try it. This first one goes to both. X squared minus 6x. And then this guy goes to both. Plus 6x and minus 36. These cancel because they're opposites. X squared minus 36, check. X squared minus 36, that's right. So what's our actual answer? This is our answer. What's below it, this is all just the check, right? This is our answer. And you could always move the order of the parentheses. There we go. All right, so that's a good one. Let's go on now to 26 will be a good question. Yeah, let's try 26. X squared plus 8x plus 4x plus 32. Okay, now on this one, when you have 4 terms, I haven't really given you a strategy. When you have 4 terms, you have to do a 2-2 split, meaning first 2 back 2. That's how you handle 4 terms. It's too many, right? With 3 terms, we've been doing a whole bunch of 3-term problems. We jump right into the 2 parentheses. Same thing for 2 terms. We just do the 2 parentheses. But for 4 terms, you got to do a 2-2 split. Okay? And now these first 2, what do those first 2 have in common? X, right? So we take out an x from those first 2. What does that leave on the inside? X times x, right? Invisible 1 powers go back to x squared. X times plus 8 will go back to plus 8x. Bring down that plus that's in the middle, this guy. And now do these 2. What goes into 4 and 32? 4 does. And let me give you a hint that'll speed you up. Whenever you're doing the 4 terms, the 2-2 split, the parentheses will match. Guaranteed. The parentheses will match. So this is x plus 8. This will also be x plus 8. Double check it. 4 times x, 4x. 4 times 8, 32. See how it works? They will always match. When you're doing 4 terms and you do the 2-2 split, 2-2 split, the 2 parentheses will always match. Now, what do we do from here? Are we done? Can we stop here? No. It turns out, you see this plus sign that's not in the parentheses anywhere? Whenever you have a plus sign not in the parentheses, that means you're not done. Look back. Look back at the answer. See how this final answer, see how all the pluses right here and the minus are contained in parentheses? If you look back, all of our pluses and minuses are contained in parentheses. That always has to be the case when you're done factoring. So this plus sign tells us we're not done, and that also tells us how to, that plus sign tells us we're not done, and it tells us how to split up what we're looking at. So we're looking at 2 terms. This is one big old term, and this is another big old term, that both have a parenthesis, x plus 8. Well, how are we going to factor that? It might look mysterious to you, but let me help. What if you had xw, over here on the side, just think with me, what if you had x times w plus 4 times w? How would you factor that? You would know how to factor that, right? What do these 2 both have in common? You'd go, well, they both have a w, right? Put the w in the front, right? That's what we always do. We take the common part to the front, remove the common part, it's been taken to the front, and then bring down what's left over, x and plus 4, right? Because that w times x would go back to xw, the order doesn't matter, and w times 4, 4w. It's right. So you would take out the common element, cross it off, and bring down the leftovers. Well, that's exactly what we have here. It's just a bigger piece. That whole x plus 8 is like a big W. Both those x plus 8s are like a big W. It's what the 2 terms have in common. They both have a parenthesis, x plus 8. So just like you put a W in the front, put a parenthesis x plus 8 in the front. It's the same thing, it's just bigger. They both have a parenthesis x plus 8, just like both having a W. Put it in the front, and then what? And then we remove it, start a new set of parentheses, bring down the leftover x and the leftover 4, and we're done. That's it. Why? Because the plus signs are all contained now, aren't they? They're all in parentheses. No loose horses. All the horses are corralled. All the plus signs are in the parentheses. It's the right answer. And you see how that whole x plus 8 could go boom next to the x and boom next to the 4, and we'd be right back where we were, so it's correct. I know we think of the x and the 8 as separate, but if you just thought about the whole x plus 8 as one big chunk, the whole thing with parentheses could go next to the x, next to the 4, and it's the same as where we had it, and we're done. This is our answer right here. No need to check it. That's kind of nice. It's with 4 terms, you don't need to check it. It's just done right there. Let's try another one. Let's try 28. X times y plus 9 times y minus 8 times x minus 72. All right, so looking at this one, 4 terms. So what do you do when you've got 4 terms? 2 split, and the parentheses will match. And there's no need, so 2 split, parentheses will match, no need to check, right? So there's our guide. So first 2, last 2. What do the first 2 have in common? What do they both share? A y, right? Remove it, put it in the front, bring down the x and the 9, because that y could multiply and go back. That's what they have in common. Take the minus in the middle and bring it down. And now the back two, what do these go? What goes into 8 and 72? Use your calculator if you're not sure. It's 8. And guess what's going to be in the parentheses? Parentheses will match. What is this one? X plus 9? This has got to be the same. Let's check it. Minus 8 times x, minus 8x, minus 8 times 9, minus 72. I guess I said there's no need to check, but we could just do it for fun. Okay, now we're not done there. How do we know we're not done? Got a loose horse right there. We got a horse that's not corralled. We got a minus sign not in the parentheses. We're not done until all the horses are corralled. All the pluses and minuses are in the parentheses. How do we go forward? Well, we have this term and this term. And what do they both share in common? The parentheses x plus 9 is like a big W, right? They both have it. They both have the parentheses x plus 9 because they will match. They'll have a match. So you put the parentheses x plus 9 in the front. Remove it, start a new set of parentheses, bring down the leftover, y and minus 8. And that's correct, right? Because that whole x plus 9 could go boom next to the y and boom next to the minus 8, and we'd be right back where we were. So it's correct. No need to check further. That's the final answer. All the horses are corralled. There we go. That's how it works. So 29 and 30 should be the same. There we go.